All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Pops and Drops podcast.
What up, people?
This week, I thought we would discuss the PP1 molecule, which is hypothesized to be the molecule that blocks our memory and makes us forget previous lifetimes.
Dope.
If there is an amnesia that is somehow programmed into us so that we don't recall our prior lifetimes, that may be a target for potential future genetic engineering that would allow us to recall.
Cool.
So the I guess to kind of create a baseline for agreement between us. Human beings have a soul, yes or no?
100,000,000% yes.
Okay. So, and that soul dies with our physical body or goes on, or what's your opinion about that?
I think it goes on. I think that our soul energy starts at like an ant and works its way up to humans and then cycles through humans and then a few, like, could be thousands of times, and then aliens and
okay. So
and I think dogs are either right below us or right above us.
Okay. Interesting.
Like, I think a human can be like, okay, I want to take a break from being a human and go and be a dog for like a life.
Oh, wonder where whales are.
They're probably up there. I think they are probably above us.
Okay. Interesting. So this research into the PP1 molecule, I haven't delved too far into it. But there seems to be some indication that there is a factor that leads to deterioration of memory over time. They may have come across it in doing like research into Alzheimer's or something, but if this molecule is created by an enzyme that's produced or protein that's produced by the DNA, and the DNA can be engineered, then potentially you could, through some kind of genetic manipulation, eliminate that molecule, which would then allow people to remember.
Is there a way that there might be a way to not eliminate the molecule, but make it temporarily dormant?
Could be.
So that, like, because I think it would be, if like they eliminated this molecule and then you all of a sudden remembered all of your past lives, right?
Yeah.
That might mess you up, like, big time. But if they could temporarily do it where you could like go into a chamber and temporarily like remember your past lives. So just so that it's not, because you don't know the amount of information there's probably a massive amount of information that would flood into your brain.
Potentially.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Could you exist as a functioning human being if you had all those memories?
I don't think so.
Well,
I mean, maybe that could be what like schizophrenia is or something.
Maybe. Could be. So are you familiar with the story of the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan culture of identifying
Buddha? Or not the Buddha, but the Dalai Lama?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that they go and they I mean, this last one they found really young,
mm-hmm.
right?
So, yeah, they do a search for the soul of the prior Dalai Lama by showing them artifacts from the previous life and seeing what they recognize and things like that. So I wonder if so in the Sumerian texts, the lists of kings prior to the Great Flood, the kings were listed as reigning for tens of thousands of years each, and then after the flood, the kings' reigns were the normal lifespan of a human.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the symbology is that prior to that catastrophe, the destruction of whatever the world was like before the Great Flood, if that was a real physical thing or if that's just metaphorical, but prior to that, the individual souls could recall their prior lifetimes. And so the kings, like as they identify the Dalai Lama, the Sumerian kings, souls of the Sumerian kings could be identified as they cycled through their, physical, if you just call it chapters in a book, if you call each physical body through a normal biological life cycle, but the soul could remember who it was.
Yeah.
And so that particular soul could have reigned as the Dalai Lama, process in Tibet for tens of thousands of years before they decided to progress on to whatever's next.
That would make sense.
And but then at the time of the Great Flood, if this is when that PP1 molecule got somehow programmed into our DNA, that post that event, call it could have been a physical catastrophe, or could have been metaphorical.
They found evidence that there was a giant flood. There was a great flood.
There have been numerous great floods, yes. So anyway,
that could have all been caused by aliens, though, and the rewriting of our DNA to include that.
Right. Yeah. Or us. The other thing that is interesting is that I came across last week was they've found some archaeological evidence of a metal screw contained within a block of feldspar rock that was 24 million years old.
What?
Yeah. So if
that's a crazy long time.
yeah. So if humans are, or some manifestation of people that use tools or whatever. I mean, if it was 24 million years ago, they might not have been just like us, but
or it could be us from the future going to the past.
Could be.
If we can't find, if like in the far future, like the sun's gonna explode and all that, or something happens, like we completely mess up the planet and can't get off, but we can time travel, then why wouldn't we just go back millions and millions of years?
Potentially. My thought was that the planet in its current manifestation is 4 billion years old, I guess. That's the estimation of how old the planet is. So if you think about it as a timeline and you line up 4 billion years, and let's say you go back to when the planet achieved its enough stability that it could maintain and evolve and maintain life.
Yeah.
We know that's at least 300 million years ago. I mean, the dinosaurs had already evolved to the dinosaur point 65 million years ago when when the asteroid hit the Yucatan and wiped out all the dinosaur life. So that's at least 65 million years ago. So I think it's not inconceivable. Let's say that after an asteroid impact, let's say after the 64 million years ago asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs,
Yeah.
let's say you got 1,000,000 years. Give the Earth 1,000,000 years to recover from that event and allow whatever happens, you know
Yeah.
the well, let's say,
Well, how old is Lucy? Is Lucy like 8 million years old?
I don't know. But I also don't know necessarily that Lucy would be the only
They found another one that was older than
older,
Lucy,
right?
too.
They keep the deeper they go, the more they find.
Yeah.
They found another thing they found was in Oklahoma. I think they found the remnants of a tile floor where the rock was smooth on the top, rough on the bottom, and there was mortar between the tiles, and there were straight lines that made diamond patterns.
Yeah.
So they said, well, it's a tile floor, but it was embedded within rock that was 20 million years old.
Yeah. See, we don't know shit, man. We don't know anything. We don't know anything. We really don't know.
So if humans or man, or I mean again, if it was 24 million years ago, we might have been physically different.
What also could have been like there could have been an advanced civilization of humans millions upon like 20 million years ago.
Right.
And the planet got messed up, and so they left and went to Mars.
Okay.
They were on Mars for a while. They messed up Mars, and then they came back.
Okay. I guess the question is,
Or it could have been people from Mars coming here 20 million years ago, establishing settlements.
could be. Yeah, that's possible. Is there a relationship between man's ability to travel through space and his level of consciousness and ability to manage his environment? Or do you assume that someone who could establish a colony on Mars would carry what seems to be the current iteration of our civilization's habits of abusing their environment?
I think that any advanced civilization to become advanced is going to abuse their environment. I think it's impossible to achieve technologically and a technologically advanced society without abusing the environment.
Define technology.
Like even, I mean,
Let's say, for instance,
even farmers. Okay, so even farmers like 5,000 years ago. You know, once you get enough people and you need enough land and you have to have like enough cattle and all that sort of jazz, you're already abusing the environment because you would have to produce things in mass, which is not natural.
okay. So you're saying the concentration of individuals into dense populations
Yes.
necessarily requires an abuse of their environment.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, you go into the rainforest. If there's even if there was a civilization in the rainforest, even or in ancient Mexico or Central America, where there was a large amount of people, and they have to chop down trees, they have to clear land, they have to, that's an abuse of the environment. And the more and more people, the more and more land that is taken up that is not natural. Like, I don't think it's possible when you have a large amount of people not to screw up the environment.
Okay. Well, you definitely manipulate it.
You chop down a tree, you burn it, you're putting smoke into the air.
Right.
That's an abuse of the environment.
Well, but trees, absent man, trees grow and burn. I mean, fires happen in nature without men being around.
Not to the scale.
Yeah, to scale. To scale. There are deposits in the Amazon, large deposits of biochar mixed with humanure that they've dated to thousands of years old. So, and it's the most fertile soil in the Amazon. So it's actually the intervention of early man who was creating, how to create biochar. You know what biochar is?
Burn trees? I don't know.
Well, it's not charcoal, because charcoal is if you let wood burn unmanipulated. Like if there was a naturally occurring forest fire, you would get charcoal.
Okay.
Biochar is where you take wood, you pack it densely, you set it on fire, and then you bury it so that you reduce the amount of oxygen that's available, and it creates biochar, which is it has a lot more of the nutrients, a lot more instead of the carbon escaping from the wood into the atmosphere and and dispersing, the carbon's retained but made available to plants. So that's it's one of the best fertilizers. It's because it has all this carbon still available to it. And then they mixed in the organics, the humanure and waste, and they created this rich black soil in the places where they created these deposits. And then that grows food better than the naturally occurring soils of the Amazon.
Okay.
So there's a case where understanding technology, human stewards can actually improve nature.
Okay.
So, concentrations of population don't necessarily deteriorate the environment. They can actually improve it through stewardship. And that's what permaculture is all about. Creating earthworks and engineering
Yeah.
to keep water from eroding soils and all of that, and then planting complementary guilds where the plants that grow together, work with each other to keep the nutrients in the soil in balance and things like that. So there are ways that human beings can work with the way that the environment works to create an abundance of food without destroying, quote, now it's manipulating the environment. It's not, it's obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is that on mass, that's not something that everybody can or will do.
Why isn't it something everybody can do?
Because there's billions of people in the world. There's 7 billion people in the world.
Right.
Everyone's not going to do that. There's going to be people who are going to want to go to the grocery store and pick up a steak.
Well, okay. There's a separation between the technology used to grow the food and its distribution system. Permaculture does create an abundance, and it's more sustainable in long term. The other thing is that the nutrients that are in the foods themselves, when they're grown this way, are higher. The nutrient count's higher than if you use monoculture agriculture with additives like fertilizers and things. So as industrialized farming depletes the soil, that depletes the nutrients that get into the food.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's what I'm saying.
Right. But that's not so. If the end goal is to provide nutrition for a population, permaculture versus industrialized agriculture, the volume of food is going to be lower, but the nutrient content, permaculture will provide food that has a higher nutrient content than monoculture agriculture, so you wouldn't have to eat as much to get the nutrients that you need.
Yeah.
But I don't think on balance that it would be impossible to feed the world using permaculture agriculture techniques.
I don't think it would either. I think that it's a direction we should be heading, but the problem is that people are lazy and they want things cheap and fast.
Right.
And so that's
So it's
the
a matter of
inherent
being
problem.
short-sighted rather than thinking
Yeah.
long term.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that have moved more. I mean, there's a lot of efforts to support local farmers, buy your produce at farmers markets versus the supermarket. I know it's
Minuscule.
it's minuscule, but it is growing, I think, as people
Yeah.
become more aware of GMO and additives and the potential health risks of eating food that's been sprayed with a bunch of pesticides.
But I think the problem is that the poor habits are so ingrained and they're passed down from generation to generation that it's just that's what I'm saying. Those sort of things probably led to the destruction of multiple societies
Maybe.
throughout the history of this planet and many other planets.
I would disagree that they're so ingrained, though, because if you think about it, it's probably only 2 or 3 generations that have been.
Now, in this earth, in our civilization,
Okay.
but I'm saying that, if the other civilizations completely destroyed planets, it's probably because that like greed
Right.
is a
But going back to my question is a civilization that doesn't become enlightened and aware and understand their true relationship with their environment and is abusing their own planet, do they get to a point where they can travel to a different planet before they destroy themselves?
I think that that's the only way that's probably the only way that they will get to that point where they have to leave there. The only necessity drives innovation.
Okay.
So that's why I think that, if you're all hunky dory with your planet and everyone's living in tune with nature and everybody's happy, then they might send out scouts to find out about other planets, but they probably why would they leave? But if your planet is on the brink of destruction, you are going to invest all of your resources to get the hell out of that planet.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I guess. So the other thing in the timeline to consider in the geologic record of the Earth, if you say, okay, we're finding more and more archaeological evidence that human or some, we don't necessarily know that they were Homo sapien, Homo erectus, whatever species, but a being that could create a tool that would create a metal screw that would end up embedded in 24 million year old feldspar, whatever they look like. So if you say, okay, well, let's stretch the timeline that we're going to examine back 25 million years on this planet, and then you look at the geologic record of events, cosmic events that have created extinction events or whatever on this planet, because you can find the records of major asteroidal comet impacts that spew the impact effluvium, if you will, because when an asteroid hits the planet, depending on whether it lands on ice, water, or land, it does create new mineral molecules.
Yeah.
Nuclear glass and diamonds and all kinds of things that happen in the intense heat of the collision.
And if it's an asteroid coming from another, or say there was an asteroid or a comet created from a planet exploding, or something happening far, far away,
right?
The biological enzymes would be embedded in them.
Well, maybe, or at least different minerals.
Yeah, but
minerals in different concentrations.
The way that life begins, single cell organisms could be included in that. That's why there's
maybe. I mean, yes, it's potential. That is a hypothesis that the seeds of life came from off the planet,
Yeah.
whatever that hypothesis is
And they also,
called.
and they're like octopuses could be from another planet
Okay.
because octopuses have, there's DNA in octopuses that don't exist in any other organism on this planet.
Okay.
That's why there's a lot of scientists who are like, octopuses are not from here. But like they probably were, but they think that they could have come from an asteroid or comet like millions upon millions of years ago.
Right. Okay. Well, so if you look at that geologic record of the spaces of time that the inhabitants of this planet have had a relatively benign environment, there are periods, there's kind of a regular cycle where about every 25,000 years, something really crappy happens. A supervolcano erupts, an asteroid hits the planet, there's a major solar event that floods the environment with solar radiation. So that's a pretty regular cycle, but there have, on average, but I'm not saying it happens like clockwork every 25,000 years, but that's kind of the average. But there are periods where in the geologic record that it looks like there were much longer periods of benign environment and much shorter periods. And I think right now we're like 12,500 years from the last major event, the Younger Dryas boundary. So we've gone like 12,000. We've gone
We're like
about
halfway
half
there?
of an average cycle so far.
Okay, so we're still good.
Maybe. I mean, there are shorter periods. Like
Yeah.
there were two events during the Younger Dryas, and they're only like 1,300 years apart. So sometimes they're really short, and sometimes they're really long. And my point is, so if they're, let's say, in this 25 million year timeline of life on Earth, if you will, that if we are to where we are now with our technology after 12,500 years, that if you look back through the geologic record, there are periods where it was benign for like 125,000 years.
Yeah.
So if a species or whatever could progress at the rate we're progressing, and they had 5 times as long between major catastrophe events that we've had so far, you could see a civilization or a people evolving to the point where they could have higher technologies that would allow them to travel to other planets or alter their environment, etc. That's the other thing that is, there's seems to be a lot of research going on in the area of the relationship between frequency and matter and DNA.
Okay.
If you think if DNA is resonating at a particular frequency or vibrating at a particular frequency, and there are resonant frequencies to that if you could discover and manipulate those frequencies, then you could alter DNA just by what would be the equivalent of playing music, right? Or tones or whatever.
Yeah.
Although some people now say that your thoughts are also frequencies.
Yeah.
And that through meditation or thinking particular thoughts, you can alter your own DNA.
Okay.
And if you discovered the right meditations or thoughts that would alter your DNA, you could, in theory, eliminate that PP1 molecule.
So that you could remember your past lives.
Right.
But you could also, if you got to that level, you could also alter your DNA so that you elongated your telomeres and you lived for 1,000 years
Potentially.
versus
Yeah.
120 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if doing it through thought and manipulating your own DNA through the vibrations of your meditations and thoughts, if that has a different longevity or I mean, I guess it would almost have to, versus like a chemical intervention.
Yeah.
Like, so if your thought framework, call it belief structure or meditations, supports a DNA structure that is free of the PP1 molecule, then as your body regenerates and you continue to have that thought structure or belief pattern, then, there's no risk of it coming back. But if you were to say, okay, I'm just going to get a shot, but you didn't change your belief structures and thought patterns, then the PP1 molecule might come back. So you might get a glimpse.
You would need both.
Well, you might not need both. If what really matters is the beliefs,
yeah,
you could temporarily overcome that with DMT or a thought or a shot of something or whatever. But if your underlying belief structure, the Catholic Church, for instance, or whatever your thought patterns are, if that's what's creating the molecule that blocks your recall of what's true, then, taking LSD or taking DMT or getting a shot that they eventually develop that might temporarily suspend the impact of that PP1 molecule is not going to be lasting, versus knowing the truth, knowing that you know the truth, so that the PP1 molecule, so that the DNA patterns don't perpetuate production of that molecule.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do we discover the right, if that's in fact the case, where does that come from? And potentially Gnostic texts, maybe some of the ancient civilization myths, the idea of the tree of life, fractal universes, all of that stuff may be moving us to a place where we do get an understanding of how the universe works and what consciousness is. And maybe once we realize that and get rid of all of the nonsense that's blocking us from understanding, that people will start to realize their immortal souls and not, and we'll stop forgetting each lifetime. And then maybe if the souls have consciousness, have self-awareness across multiple biological instances, right? If we're just, well, somebody said we're, soul ego spacesuits, that this physical manifestation called a human body is just it's just a suit we wear to exist in this dimension.
Yeah.
And if you know that and can recall all of your previous iterations in this place or any other place the soul's manifested, then you could, in theory, tell your own story. And as you wrote down or recalled to an audience your life, your soul life, not just your physical manifestation life, that might stretch 23,000 years. And, and so the idea that Noah, what are they in the Old Testament, is it Old Testament? I can't remember where it is, but Mephistopheles and those guys, all their lives, they said they lived 900 years and all that stuff, but maybe that was just 10 lifetimes that they could recall, that their individual physical manifestation.
Noah's dad and Noah's grandpa lived for 10,000 years.
Okay.
Was a king for 10,000 years or something like that. Noah's grandpa.
All right. So, as if a soul could remember its prior lifetimes, then it's not inconceivable that they would represent themselves as being 10,000 years old, just having cycled through many physical bodies.
Yeah.
Anyway, just another way to
It
look
would
at
also
those.
be hard to communicate though once you're like say like what if like a 5-year-old had the knowledge of hundreds of previous lifetimes?
Yeah.
How would they properly communicate? I mean, they would. I mean, even a baby, like it would just come out talking because it would know like what to say. So, if that's where we're going, and if they develop this and in the future, and if you alter your DNA, if you alter your DNA and you have a child, your child will have your altered DNA.
Theoretically.
So if you alter your DNA, you have a kid, and then the kid comes out, and the kid is like, "What's up?" Like right when it comes out of the mom, like that'll be a little freaky, don't you think?
Yeah,
Right?
it would be a little freaky. Yeah. I mean, I think the process of passing between lives is probably always going to have some buffer in it. I think if you let's say you were born into a culture where the culture had the understanding and realized that that souls pass from one life to the next. Tibet, for instance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the kids that are born into that culture, they still have to learn to speak and read as infants, right?
Yeah. But if what I'm saying is, if you're born with all of your previous knowledge, and you can access it like instantly when you're born, even in the womb, like when would it, like in the womb, like you'd be able to,
As soon as consciousness inhabits the
yeah,
fetus or whatever. Yeah.
it's just really weird. Like Oma remembers being born.
Yeah. I mean, there are people that have recollections of in womb experience.
That's freaky. Yeah. My earliest memory is like a blue carpet.
Okay.
When I was like 2, I think. Did we have a blue carpet?
I think there was a blue carpet at Oma's house before they replaced it.
I remember crawling around on a blue carpet.
That was at Oma's house.
That's my earliest memory.
Okay.
Well, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I remember being in my crib when my grandmother came and picked me up, and I remember hearing them talk about stuff. And I remember knowing what they were saying. I don't remember exactly what they were saying, but I do recall being in a crib, hearing my grandmother and my mom talking and knowing what they were talking about.
That's weird.
Yeah. Anyway.
Like understanding what they were talking about.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I knew the words, but I knew what they were saying to each other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know language is, more language and communication are more complicated than just the words that are exchanged between people. So,
yeah.
Anyway. So I guess if that's a technology, so you're thinking that the technology evolution to a point where we can travel to other planets or between solar systems, travel to other stars, requires the current trajectory, which is more and more mechanical, I guess is a word. I just wonder if the technology that would actually allow us to quote travel to other places is less, I don't know, physical, kind of more spiritual, or more
like astral projection? Have you ever practiced that?
No.
You've never practiced astral projection?
No.
You should try to meditate and practice astral projection. I've only been able to achieve it once, and I was like, it was a long time ago. But it was in Oma's old house in her room of one's own, like when I was like 14 or 15. And I was meditating, and I was above my body, and I was looking down at my body, and then I shot up to like outside the planet, and I looked at the planet, and then I shot back into my body. It was really quick.
Interesting.
But you've never practiced astral projection? Mm-mm. Do you know about astral projection and remote viewing and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
That's real. I know it's real because I've done it. I have never been able to do it since then. I think if I concentrated long enough and I tried to do it, I probably could again.
Not if you tried.
Yeah, I would have to surrender.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, like even the CIA and FBI had the CIA had a whole squadron of people who would do remote viewings and stuff.
Men who stare at goats.
Yeah. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah. That's true.
I've been able to cloud burst.
I don't know what that is either.
You don't know what cloud bursting is?
No.
I've done that twice. That was in college. It's where you focus on a cloud.
Okay.
You focus on a cloud and you try to make it disperse.
Okay.
And if you focus on it hard enough,
okay,
you can, and you really believe that you can do it, you can do it. You can make a cloud like disperse.
Okay. So consciousness can change the physical world.
Yes.
So if consciousness can change the physical world, why do you need drills?
What do you mean?
Well, if you sort of untrained, just not high priest of anything, just a guy who tried it and could disperse a cloud, do you think that someone that had years of, spiritual training could create perfect cuts in rock and drill holes?
Oh, yeah. And I think that's an ancient technology.
Okay.
That we haven't been able to access. Like that's like when they talk about how they move, like the pyramids or the Easter Island heads, like how did they get there? It would be impossible for men to move those things at that time. They probably did that with their mind.
Okay.
Because, and another thing is they thought, or not even necessarily in their mind, but they would be able to create a certain vibration that could lift things up. That's another technology that I believe did exist that we lost.
When
did we lose it?
Yeah. Is that maybe the same time that we lost recall of our prior lifetimes? Like does that spiritual technology, I guess we could call it, does that predate the last catastrophe, the last cataclysm?
I think it was around past that, but I think it was remote. Like I think it was smaller and I think the knowledge got smaller and smaller and smaller and shrunk and shrunk and shrunk.
Okay. So maybe the Atlantic civilization, Atlantis, they had it, and then when their civilization was destroyed by whatever,
or they left.
Okay. So if they knew that an asteroid was going to hit the planet, they just bugged out?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe.
I mean, if they had the technology to leave.
Yeah.
And like you said, they might have left
maybe
without.
They just left through astral projection.
Yeah.
And their physical bodies were destroyed.
They could have. That would have made sense.
Well, I guess in essence, everybody left. They just had the consciousness that they were departing of their own volition. Everybody else was was turned from physical into spiritual being by.
Remember that screenplay I was writing, Love Atlantis?
No.
It was about a guy. I was writing a screenplay about a guy who got so stoned that he teleported to Atlantis. And like in Atlantis, like Tupac was there and Albert Einstein was there and all these like giant historical figures.
Okay, I kind of remember that.
Taylor was like hooked, and she was like, okay, you need to keep writing this. And it was just the project that I let disappear. But it's about a guy who literally got so high that he teleported to Atlantis.
Okay. I think when you detach your being from your body, that definitely, for those people that are reading ancient texts and looking at, myths from different cultures, if we can move beyond the idea that we are our body, then a lot of those things that didn't make sense before start to make sense, like 23,000 year reigns of kings in Sumeria and things like that. Okay, so interesting. I wonder if you would, or would it, would it seem mundane if you say, okay, dispatch with the idea that my lifespan is only the length of my current physical manifestation, and you say, okay, I'm gonna live for 23,000 years or something. Do you behave differently? Do you invest resources differently? You build cathedrals that are going to take 3 lifetimes to complete? Do you do a project like the Great Pyramids that, may have spanned, the construction of which may have spanned hundreds of years or dozens of lifetimes?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's just a different perspective.
Yeah. We're closer to Cleopatra than Cleopatra was to the building of the pyramids.
Okay. When was Cleopatra? Roman times, I guess.
Yeah, like right around the AD BC switch.
Okay. So 2,500 years or something.
Yeah.
To 2,200 years.
And the pyramids are like 6,000 or something like that.
Well, at the earliest.
Yeah.
Lots of estimates now put the pyramids construction at 25,000 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't know anything.
Yeah.
We don't know anything. And they were probably power stations is what they think they were.
Yeah.
Like massive power stations with like water flowing in and all that sort of jazz.
Yeah. So for
if they had power stations, they had electricity.
They had a source of energy. So you could call it electricity, but it might have been a form of energy that could be tapped to use to power things.
Yeah.
But not necessarily what we call electricity now. It would have been in a slightly different form. So, for instance, and this is, Tesla was trying to recreate this with his
alternate current.
With his broadcasting energy through the atmosphere. So if you have a pyramid and you have the subterranean chamber, which remember in the time when the pyramid was created, that Giza plateau was not arid.
Wasn't it tropical?
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily tropical, but the Nile River was closer to where the pyramids were. So essentially, the causeway that comes out of the pyramid goes up to the edge of where the Nile River used to run.
Yeah.
Which means that the groundwater table underneath the pyramid had water moving up and down as the tides went in and out. And so the water was moving around in all those subterranean chambers and creating static electricity, what we'll call static electricity, creating, energized molecules.
Yeah.
And so they think that the pathways that come up from the subterranean chamber and then up into the Grand Gallery and up into the King's Chamber, at least at the Giza Pyramid, the Great Pyramid. Sorry, those weren't passageways for people to go through because they're perfectly 3-foot squares with smooth sides. Now the Egyptian archaeologists and tourism boards have put stairways and handrails and things in them, but originally those were just shafts.
Yeah.
Smooth sided shafts. And so the idea was that those energized molecules that was created in the subterranean chambers with the water moving through the ground there, that traveled up and was concentrated in the King's Chamber, and then somehow it was channeled through that mechanism above the King's Chamber up, and then came out the top through the cold cap on top of the pyramid. But then that energy would go up into the atmosphere. So it was a generator, a way that the energy was concentrated and transmitted.
Yeah.
Then the question becomes, if you're putting that energy into the atmosphere, why are you putting it there? And how are you using it?
Well, it was like wireless charging for everything.
Yeah, could be.
So like if you wanted a light, there didn't have to be wires.
You just had to have the know-how of pulling that charge out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And applying it to create a light or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've also found like a ton of there's devices that they have found. Didn't they find there's a watch, or in like there is a hieroglyph, and one of the people is wearing like a watch.
Oh,
like a modern watch. It looks kind of similar to a modern watch.
I've seen a hieroglyph of the light bulb, but I don't know that I've seen the watch.
It's not like a hieroglyph. It's like it's like carved in.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen that. Now they have discovered a mechanism that I think they attribute to. Well, I don't know. Do they attribute it to the Greeks? I know that there are Ptolemaic writings about mechanisms that the seafaring people could use to
navigate. Yeah,
right.
That thing, and they've reconstructed what it looked like,
right,
with like cogs and gears and all that sort of jazz.
And there's a ton of ancient maps that, if people didn't have a way of measuring time, they couldn't create.
Yeah,
like you have to be able to keep time. In order to use a sextant to look at the stars to figure out where you are on the planet, you have to know what time it is at the place where you left.
Yeah.
And, the Europeans didn't create a clock that was accurate enough until like the 1800s or whatever it was, 1600s. But but there's maps that are from hundreds of years before that are accurate. So there's, obviously the Eurocentric history of the planet and the anthropology that these European anthropologists have propagated through our educational system are way off.
Yeah.
Like there's stuff that they don't talk about. I mean, even the Egyptians.
Well, in the Egyptian, there's also there's another like carving thing of our full solar system.
The Sumerians.
Yeah, with accurate sizes of the sun and all the other planets.
Right.
And there's no like how did they know that?
Yep.
With what we believe the technology that they had at that time, it's impossible for them to know that.
Yeah. So
we're understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots and lots of evidence that we
don't know anything.
We have hubris about how much we know, and when clear evidence comes along that our timelines are way off, rather than acknowledging that and re-examining our thoughts, we just ignore them.
Yeah.
And that's modern archaeology, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, the idea that the pyramids were tombs came from European explorers. If you talk to the local Egyptians, they don't call the pyramids tombs. It was like some dude from England who came along and decided that the pyramids were tombs, and then that became the official line of Egyptology, which was superimposed upon the local population by foreign archaeologists.
Yeah.
Theoretically knew more, but
And it's well, were they there are pyramids in almost every ancient civilization.
yeah.
Like what?
Yeah. And big ones too.
Yeah.
There's a pyramid, I think it's in Bosnia, that's even bigger than the pyramid at Giza.
Was that the one that they thought was a mountain?
Yep.
And then they like dug it, and they dug around it, and they're like, this
Man-made.
is a pyramid. What the hell?
Yep.
And they thought it was a mountain for like hundreds of years or something like that.
And now that they're exploring it, they're finding these chambers that have really odd energetic characteristics.
Yeah. There's also is that in Samaria, that underground city? There's like a complete underground city that
I think that's Turkey.
that's been that they found was used multiple times, but they don't know exactly how old it is. But the evidence is that it's been used for thousands of years, by multiple different civilizations that were in the area.
Yeah. Yeah, that the Bosnian pyramid, I think there's like places where people can go and it changes their blood chemistry. They've like done experiments where people that had ailments, they'd take their blood and they'd go into these chambers underneath this Bosnian pyramid for a period of time, and they'd come out and their blood chemistry would have changed.
There's also that giant rock in Arizona, that underneath that giant rock I think it's in Arizona, that has similar things. And there was a guy who like lived underneath it for a really long time, but then he went psycho and I think killed him. So blew him. The FBI came after him, and he like blew himself up.
I have not heard
underneath
that story.
That was on Ancient Aliens.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, what is this? And he was building this giant thing to harness energy to like travel to another dimension. Then he said that was downloaded into his brain, and then he was killed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's a place in Florida where a guy, I can't remember his name, but he created this whole like I want to call it a park, but he created this whole installation out of coral. Like there's these giant 2-ton blocks of coral, and he wouldn't show anybody how he was doing it, but I don't know what the name of that. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, they said that he used those like pine cone rocks to focus energy to carve and levitate the coral things, because he was working by himself to build this whole place. I wish I could remember what it was called, but I'd like to visit that place one day. That would be cool. Yeah. All right. So, we've had a wonderful discussion talking about the nature of reality and the things that we don't know, but potentially a different direction for what, reality is.
Yeah.
Something to think about. We're going to play a song that is coming out next week.
I haven't decided what to do with this one.
Okay.
I'll probably put it out, but I don't know yet. It's still up on Label Radar, so I'm still waiting. I think I put it on Label Radar.
Oh, but this is another podcast exclusive?
Yeah.
Your first listen to Dum Bum Dum?
Yeah, DUMBBUMDUM.
Okay.
It's I think it taps into ancient, I don't know. It's got some tribal beats in it. It's gonna get stuck in your head.
It got stuck in mine.
Like right after the first listen. So here's Dum Bum Dum.
Have a great week. See you.
Adios.
Closer.